Maybe we should start with voting rights. It seems so simple. We have elections, people can go vote. Why is it so hard for us? Why can't we get it right?
Well, the vote is the heart of democracy, but it's also the case that the vote is power. And throughout our history, people who've had power, who've been around, have fought to make it harder for other people to have that chance to be part of the democracy. We started out with only white men who owned property being able to vote. And Ben Franklin, when they had the revolution in Philadelphia in 1776, he actually fought for ending the property requirement so poor white men could vote. And he said, there's a man who owns a jackass and it's worth $50. So the man can vote. Then the jackass dies. The man is older, he's wiser, but the jackass is still dead. So the man can't vote. So Ben Franklin asked, well, who really has the right to vote, the man or the jackass? In Massachusetts, John Adams represented the other strain against broader democracy. He was writing the Constitution for that state. And they said, hey, you ought to do the same thing, end the property requirement. And John Adams said, if we do that, women will demand the right to vote. Lads of 18 will demand the right to vote. Men who have not a farthing to their name will think themselves worthy of an equal voice in government, and they will demand a right to vote. John Adams said, there will be no end of it. And that's really the American story. There is no end of it. Every generation, people have had to fight for the right to vote, fight for the right to be heard, and fight to be equal, truly equal in our political system.
So how did things fall apart only in the last 20 years? Maybe that's a little extreme, but it felt like in the 90s, we'd gotten through the civil rights movement, and globally, we'd gotten through the Cold War, and it just seemed like we knew what democracy was. It wasn't perfect everywhere, it wasn't perfect here, but it was pretty good. And it seems like there has been retrenchment, that gerrymandering has increased, big money has diluted politics for a lot of individual voters. How did it all change so much?
Well, I think that we took a lot of the progress of our democracy for granted for a long time, as it was sort of sweeping the world, as our system was the model for so many people. A few things happened. In the 2000 presidential election, there was basically a tie. It all came down to one state, Florida. There was a recount, and it was ultimately decided by just a few hundred votes, the presidency, by the Supreme Court. And I think at that moment, a lot of people realized that you could win power by suppressing the vote, right, by making sure your side could vote, by making sure the other side couldn't vote, and that the way we did elections in this country was really ramshackle. It's also been the case that a lot of people have seen political advantage, a political strategy to go after democracy, to go after voting rights. When the Supreme Court in 2010 did the Citizens United decision, that basically said that big individual donors, wealthy individuals and corporations had the unlimited ability to spend money in campaigns. And then 3 years later, that same Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, which was the most successful civil rights law in American history. So it's both turned out to be that we have a kind of a rickety system based on paper, not using digital technology, and that some people, as a political strategy, are actually trying to make it harder for other people to vote.